Damage Report is a 2 to 6 player co-op board game where players work together in real time as the crew of a spaceship to survive a series of evolving catastrophes. The game is fast-paced and tactical, and it keeps players engaged until the very end. At the core of this is a unique real-time mechanism that creates an ever-changing gameplay experience. There's no game quite like Damage Report. You'll find your pulse quickened and that every decision is yours to make but affects the entire team. There are 5 highly replayable scenarios included with the base game, and each scenario lasts about 45 minutes. There are 6 individual characters with their own unique sets of abilities, a dozen ship systems with their own functions, 4 different sculpted tools, and hundreds of other pieces that allow Damage Report to be a new challenge every time. And for those of you who feel inspired to do so, this game is ripe with possibilities to create your own scenarios. Now let's talk about some of the pieces that are included with the game. Right here we have the 6 different character dashboards with the character tokens. Then we have the ship modules that make up the actual ship. And then these are corridors and airlocks. They link the ship modules together. Then over here we have the 5 different decks of repair cards, each with a different color. Then we have the supply rooms and tool rooms. That's where you will get your supplies and tools from. These are the crisis trackers along with a ship hull card. Then we have the components. This is metal. These are crystals, energy, and circuits. Then there are 4 different kinds of sculpted tools right here. There's 2 of each. Then we have the damage report cards. Every 3 minutes the timer will go off and you'll have to draw a new damage report card with a new problem to solve. There are also damage report event cards. These are not always required, but they can scale up the difficulty of the game if you want. And then we have the module cards. These are drawn at the start of the game to determine where each player starts in the ship. And finally, to give the game its real-time element, we have the timers. This is a digital timer for the entire game, and then each character has their own separate timer. Now, as we mentioned before, there are 5 different scenarios with the base game. We're going to be setting up the first one today, which is the Icarus problem. It's on page number 21 of the instruction booklet. This is what the spaceship will look like once you have all of the ship modules down and connected with all of the corridors. Once your ship is assembled, you want to add your tools to the tool room and all of your components to the supply rooms. Now we're ready to assemble the damage report deck. First thing you want to do is find the game over card and place it face down at the very bottom of your deck. And then I've already shuffled these, so you want to pull out 14 random damage report cards and put them on top of your game over card. The last thing we need to do to set up the ship is set the system status indicators on these gauges on the side of each module and place our repair card decks in each module, and both of those are dictated by the scenario instructions in the booklet. So this is the scenario we will be working with, the Icarus problem. You are on board the Starship Neutrino on your way back from a routine scouting mission when suddenly the hyperdrive fails. Now that's not a problem. There are plenty of components on the ship to make repairs. There is one issue. You've come out of hyperdrive dangerously close to a star. So you have 33 minutes until the star cooks you to repair your hyperdrive. Now this means that to win the game, you need to get your hyperdrive all the way up to 100%, and you lose. One of 2 things happen. Either you run out of time or your life support goes down to 0%. And of course, if your hull goes down to 0%, your ship is destroyed and you lose. Now on the Neutrino, we have 3 modules to worry about. We have the shields, which are protecting the ship. We have life support, which is keeping the crew, that's us, alive, and we have the hyperdrive. In this case, we're trying to fix the hyperdrive, so that is our win condition. The last part of setup is choosing and setting up your characters. Now there are 6 characters in total, but we only have 3 here because each scenario has a list of star players that work particularly well with the scenario. And in this case, we have Kelly, we have Professor Frank, and we have Lieutenant Mark. Now, one thing to point out is that these cards are actually double-sided, so if you're right-handed or left-handed, you can flip it to work specifically for you. Now on the dashboards themselves, we have 3 major sections. We have the inventory right here on the right, and that is more or less depending on the character. Below that, we also have a list of their abilities, including their special ability. And then above that, we have the time track segments, and that is where your timer goes. Now from this point on, we're only going to be working with 2 characters. We're going to be working with Kelly and Lieutenant Mark, and the next step is to figure out where they're going to actually start the game in the ship. To do that, we draw cards from the modules deck. So we'll draw one for Kelly. She is going to start in the hyperdrive, so we take her marker and place it in the hyperdrive area. Make sure we don't hit the inspect deck right here. That's where the discarded cards are going to go. And then for Mark, he's going to start in the shields area. Now, let's actually talk about how to play the game. And let's start off by talking about the real-time element. This is the meta timer. This will time the entire game, counts up to 45 minutes. You need to complete your goal before that time runs out. You also have the sand timers. These are for the individual characters, as I mentioned. Now, a character can take one action per turn, but how do you know when to take that action? At the beginning of the game, every player will start with their timer on the yellow 30-second segment, and then, at the start of the game, immediately flip it to green. Green means go. This is when you can take any action that you want, but only one. Once this timer runs out, you have to flip it to another segment, and that is determined by your life support. Wherever your life support status indicator is, in this case, it would be in the yellow at 80%. That means you would flip this back to yellow. Wait until that timer runs out, and then flip it to green, take another turn. If your life support is lower, say it's in the red, or even worse, in the black, you would then turn to the black 1 minute section and have to wait 1 minute until you cycle from black to red to yellow, and finally back to green before you can take another action. Now, every segment on the time tracker represents 15 seconds, and this is a 15-second timer. So every 15 seconds, you cycle from one segment to the next. So what exactly can you do on a turn? Well, we're going to show off two things you can do here. Now, as I said, we have Kelly in the hyperdrive, and we have Mark in shields. Now, Kelly is going to do an inspect. When you inspect, you take a card from the repair deck and drop it down. So Kelly needs a couple of things to do this repair, but mostly she needs 2 pieces of metal, which are all the way on the other side of the ship. Fortunately, Mark happens to be right next to the metal supply room, so Mark is going to do a relay action. A relay move consists of 3 parts, all of which are optional. You can do one, or you can do all of them. First off, you can grab or drop anything on the floor in the room you're currently in. Next, you can move to an adjacent room, and finally, you can grab or drop anything in that room too. If you just want to grab or just want to move, you can do that. For Mark's turn, he is going to first move into the metal supply room and then grab 3 pieces of metal. Those pieces go in Mark's inventory, filling 2 slots each, and he can carry this much because his special ability is Strong Arms, which gives him 7 inventory slots. Meanwhile, Kelly needs a blowtorch to finish this repair, so she's going to use a relay turn to move into life support, and then on her next turn, she's going to move into the tool room and pick up the blowtorch. Meanwhile, Mark is using his 2 turns first to move into D8, and then to move into the hyperdrive, and at the same turn, he drops off his 3 pieces of metal for Kelly. She may only need 2 now, but you never know what the future's going to hold. And then he moves on his next turn to get more supplies. Several turns later, Kelly gets back to the hyperdrive with all the supplies to make the repair, and in the same turn picks up 1 piece of metal. Now, the process of making a repair is a turn in itself. You transfer any items you have in the player's inventory onto the repair card. Now, even though this repair needs 2 metal, Kelly can only hold 1 metal along with the energy and blowtorch that she also needs. To finish her repair turn, she will take 1 item from her inventory and place it on the repair card. Now, typically during a repair turn option, the player can only put 1 item on the card per turn, but Kelly is special. Her special ability allows her to place 2 items per turn, so she'll also take the blowtorch and place it on the card. Now, a couple turns later, Kelly has used some of her turns to pick up another piece of metal and another turn to place 2 more pieces of metal on the repair card. The repair is now complete. Now, when a repair card is completed, all the items on the repair card go back to their respective supply rooms. The tools drop to the floor, and then the big payoff, the system status indicator next to that module is raised by however much it says on the card. In this case, 30%. So now the hyperdrive is 30% operational, and the repair card is taken away. Now the last turn option you have is the one simply called Special. Those may or may not be in your scenario because they require specific modules to be in play. For example, the teleport chamber. If you have the teleport chamber in your ship, there would be a special action to charge the teleporter and a special action to use the teleporter to teleport from one side of the ship to another. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that unlike other board games where these turns would be happening one after another and passing from player to player, these are all happening simultaneously. So you need to be communicating with your team members and keeping in mind where they are and what they're doing all the time. Now, there's one more part of the game we need to talk about, and that is the damage report cards. Every 3 minutes, the timer that's counting down to the end of the game will go off. When that happens, you want to draw a damage report card. Call out damage report and look at the card to see your fate. There are 2 columns on the card. The right column is only if your shields are at, in this case, 70% or above. Our shields are not at 70%, they're at 50%. So we're gonna follow the slightly worse left column. On the left column, we can see that we will take 20% damage to this green icon. The icons on damage report cards match up with repair decks that may or may not be in play and may or may not be in the same module in every scenario. So in this case, it's the green card, which happens to be in life support. So life support will take 20 damage. This purple icon is actually not in play in this ship. So we dodged a bullet there because we can just ignore that part of the card. And finally, the blue, which happens to be shields, is reduced by 10%. Something else worth mentioning about the shield module specifically is that if shields are at 0% and you take a hit to them, your hull will be decreased by 25%. And if you get down to 0% on your hull, you lose. Something else that may happen when you draw a damage report card is a hull breach. A hull breach will only happen to a corridor piece, and it will be a specific corridor piece. And when it happens, you flip the corridor card over and see what's going to happen. In this case, life support is going to be reduced to 10%. And that means that any character that goes into the corridor from now on, their turns will act as if all of life support is at 10%, which means each turn will take 1 minute. Now, this can be repaired. In this case, it's going to take a blowtorch and some tape, and then you would flip it back to a regular corridor. Keep in mind that when a hull breach happens, any items that are on the floor of the corridor card will be sucked out into space and returned to their supply rooms, with the exception of tools, which are magnetized, and so they stick to the ground. Now remember that the 10% life support only affects players who are spending their turn in the corridor with a hull breach. The other parts of the ship still have normal life support. And that's it. You now know everything that you need to know to play the first scenario, the Icarus problem. Now, there are a lot of other scenarios in the game, and if you want to play those, you might have different modules. You might have not just shields, you might have teleporters. So if you want to learn more about what those modules do, we've produced a whole series of videos that talk about each module specifically. Other than that, have fun playing, thank you for watching, and good luck out there.